the kind of campus we come from and where, I guess, the state we come from. And it's California, so it's one of the most diverse states. You probably already all know that. But we come from Cal Poly Pomona, which is top 10 national diversity. I think we were 8th this year and 6th last year. So we're pretty high up there when it comes to ethnic and racial diversity. And we also have an AB 540 student club, which is the equivalent of like an undocumented student club where they all can get together and kind of share the issues. And we also have a staff member who's on payroll who serves as a student liaison to these students. And in addition, we have 6 cultural centers, one for each ethnicity, and we have one called the Cesar E. Chavez Center for Higher Education. And the person who works there is kind of a mentor to the students who are undocumented and to Latino, Chicano students as well. But that center and all of them put on programs probably every single week. And I put the word wazoo just to make you guys really understand that it's literally every single week you will see diversity programs on our campus. So I'm not sure if that's how it is for a lot of your schools, but this is kind of where we come from, and that's the perspective you're seeing. But I want to talk about more about what you won't see in the media. And it's exactly who is being affected, how many people, what are the numbers. And they'll always have you believe it's kind of larger than it is. So it's 1.8 million undocumented children in the US right now. 6,500 of those will graduate per year, a mere 3.5%. Of those 65,000, excuse me, 7,000 to 13,000 will attend college annually. And as you can see, that's not even 0.5%. Now, it says the American I can't say it. The ACLU gave that statistic, but it's actually wrong. I'm sorry. It's supposed to be the Urban Institute, which is a very nonpartisan research group. So they're not biased, and they're not trying to bias the statistics in any way. Now, U.S. Department of Education says there's 18.2 million on a national scale. And of these, there's the right statistic, 7,000 to 13,000 are undocumented. And like I said, the percent is really low. That's actually who's being affected. So with that context being added, I want to give it off to Annelle so she can talk to you a little bit more about the arguments against undocumented individuals, basically taxes.
Okay, so I want to ask all you guys a question. Do undocumented immigrants pay taxes?
Yes.
Woo! Oh, you're making this easy. Okay. Well, let's give an example. California. California collects 12% from corporate taxes, 20% from sales taxes, 5% from all other taxes, and 55% from income taxes. And it's very argumentative because, yes, this large group here, we do believe so, but there's others that don't. But it's provable by the ITIN. What is ITIN? ITIN is Individual Tax Identification Number. Undocumented immigrants use ITIN to open bank accounts, acquire mortgages, establish credit, and pay taxes. And they do so for them to be considered as good citizens and prove themselves when applying for a green card application. While testifying to Congress, Mark Everson, the IRS commissioner, stated, many illegal aliens utilizing ITINs have been reporting tax liability to the tune of $50 billion from 1996 to 2003. They have paid $90 billion in federal taxes in the last 8 years, and $428 billion contributed to the U.S. gross domestic product in 2006. Now, there's many disadvantages for these undocumented immigrants. They don't receive any benefits for paying taxes because due to their legal status. They're victimized with political propaganda stating that they are hurting our political setting and disrupting our economy. They're afraid to use social services. As you can see from the video, some of the students have their faces covered because they were afraid of showing their identity and fear that they will be deported. If given opportunity, they will not be considered a burden. And I want to leave you with the last note. Take this into consideration what the IRS Commissioner, Mark Everson, testified to Congress. If anything, we need more immigrants coming into this country, not less, especially the baby boomers retiring. And also, I want you guys to take into consideration that these people, even though they're illegal, they stabilize our economy. And now I want to pass it over to Marina.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the social aspects and the mentality of those undocumented immigrants and how they suffer throughout their stay here. So what happens is that every time we have a pluralistic culture or society, that means when one or more cultures are coming together to share a common land and to work together, whatever that is, we have cross-culture. And we have that because people are bringing their own culture and they're implementing it to the new setting. And the process by which those immigrants learn the new culture is called acculturation. And that's when they learn the social norms, they learn the language, they learn how to behave, and that's part of who they are in the new society. And there are two ways they can do that. There's the marginalization and there's the integration. Marginalization is when there is no possible exchange between the two cultures. And that might happen for several reasons. One of them is that the whole society is not very welcoming of those immigrants, and that would be an issue. The other part is integration, and that's what we aim for every time we have cultures. We want them to interact and be peaceful to each other so we can understand. We don't even have to understand their reasons, we just have to accept them as being different from us. The marginalization is what happens to those undocumented immigrants. That's how in America we treat them, we marginalize them. And that pressure they suffer from the society causes several harmful mental effects on them. They are depressed, they have low self-esteem, they are deprived from social interactions, and they are not active members of society because we do not let them be. If victimized, their behavior is more likely to show that label that we put on them. If we say you are not part of society, how they are going to be part of society if we don't let them be? And that's the problem that will come up after with the family dynamics. What happens is that those children who are brought here at a very young age, they did not go through acculturation. They just learn American culture because it's their culture. That's how they were raised. That's where they live. They do not know any other country. But their parents did. They went through acculturation. And we have the problem because the children feel like they are Americans, and they are. They love this country, but at the same time, they're seeing their parents being victimized by society. And they have this mixed feelings, this confusion about, I am American, but my country is mistreating my parents. So it's very, very linked to marginalization and the mental effects of that. And I've been talking a lot about the society and what society does, but I think the most important point is what we should do about it. We should not use the us versus them concept. We have to use us, and us only. Social conflicts will arise independently of where we are. We are in a globalized economy, a globalized world where we have interaction every single time. And those differences, the conflict is expected, it's normal. But what we do about it and how to solve it, that's the relevant part. So my opinion is that we have to distance ourselves from the problem. We have to be emotionally disconnected from it so we can analyze it with a very logical point of view and see them as what they really are, human beings. And as human beings, we have to give them the rights and responsibilities of being active members of society. And I think the most important part of this all is right here. We're all honor students, part of honor colleges and faculty, staff, and all of that. We are the example for our own university body. We have to set the standard that will be followed afterward. And we are here to discuss it, bring up suggestions, come up with solutions for that, so we can really address the problem as it should be addressed. So right now I'm going to hand it over to Justin so he can talk about the rights, liberties, and laws of those undocumented immigrants.
So I wanted to go over kind of why we're up here and why we're doing this, and it's basically because we want the DREAM Act to pass. It's the federal level of one. So if you don't know what it is, it basically, in a short summary, allows an undocumented student to pursue a military career or a degree, and at the end of that pursuit, they can get a path to residency. So it's called the Development, Relief, and Education for Alien Minors Act, and a lot of people are against this act on the sole basis that they think if it passes, that people are going to be just like driving over to America, go right past the border, and yay, the DREAM Act, we can get our green card. But if you read in the provisions of the actual article, it says that you have to be continuously present in the United States for at least 5 years before it's enacted. So that, I don't know, I feel like it's a fallacy. It's kind of a debunked argument because the provision is right there, which says that they can't really get their green card unless they were here 5 years continuously before it. So the act itself says that you can have temporary residency, 6 years to pursue a higher education degree or to have a military career. And after you attain those, one of the two, you can get a green card to stay as a permanent resident. You get to pay in-state tuition, and since I think you get to pay in-state tuition, the legislators kind of argued with each other and the bold part, they would not be eligible for federal education grants or financial aid as kind of a bargain. So the federal DREAM Act failed, and that's what the students were talking about when they said, well, how would you feel if the DREAM Act passed or if it didn't pass? It failed in December, and while I was working for Senator Dianne Feinstein from California, we would receive like thousands of calls, faxes, emails, all against the DREAM Act, constantly. And Dianne Feinstein is probably one of the most democratic senators out there. And when it came back up in May, she didn't vote for it, and she didn't help it get passed. And I really, really think it was because of the thousands of calls that she was getting, and all the other senators were getting. So now policy experts are predicting that, one, it'll probably never come back, and two, if it comes back, it probably will never pass. So, rights and liberties. The one right that I guess you could say is a policy right is through Plyer v. Doe. It was a Supreme Court ruling which pretty much said that schools or any institution of education cannot deny access to undocumented immigrants. They can't deny admission just because the student's undocumented. They can't even ask. They can't engage in any practices that might disclose the undocumented student's status. And basically, this was the first capstone policy arrangement for undocumented students to actually get to go to school. Okay, so I worked for an immigration lawyer this year in Los Angeles, and he was one of the best. I think he was one of the best because he was asked to go to Congress 3 times to testify. So he's a pretty big shot guy. And when the Morton memo was issued this June, he freaked out, and he's been working in it for 20 years. Now, the Morton memo, which you have probably no idea what it is. So John Morton is the director of, if anyone's going to be deported, John Morton is the person who's at the top of that branch. He's the one who works in ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. And he issued a letter saying pretty much that the goal of that agency was to only deport people who are convicted criminals. And then his boss, Janet Napolitano, and the old governor from the state, pretty much released a letter saying he's right. So, if you can, yeah, go ahead. In the language of the memo, there's a lot of different points. And in the language, it pretty much has the DREAM Act embedded into it. So a lot of policy experts will say it's kind of Obama's doing. But if you read the top, basically, if you came here when you were young, you get a little bit of leeway for not being deported. You get prosecutorial discretion, which means the person deporting you in court can say, you know what, we don't want to deport this person because it's not really our goal. The second point I think is the best. The person's pursuit of education in the United States. So basically, what happens is your lawyer, if you're being deported, will go take this memo, show the judge and be like, this is not a priority, why are we doing this? And a lot of the times, especially this summer, it was debunked. A lot of deportation officers would just stop prosecuting that person. So, I covered that. But basically that's the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening. We want to open up for questions and